Howdy, folks, and welcome to another day in the Milky Way. And tonight we got a great guy on, Zig Zag Zilla. Thank you.
Greetings, everyone.
Yes, I appreciate you being on here tonight. And we're going to be talking about what's up with not gardening. Why shouldn't we garden? What's wrong with us?
Ain't that something, huh?
Have you heard the news? You know, I mean, it's all over the place. The studies and stuff like that. Oh my gosh, it's all out there. And I do have, of course, I have a presentation, and we can talk about it in a second as soon as I find the right slide. But anyway, have you heard about all of this stuff?
I haven't. I mean, I would like to be informed a little bit of it. See what I can feel about it, actually.
We're going to inform you tonight. Okay, here we go. There it is. A record of University of Michigan gardening studies examine carbon footprint of urban farm foods. An international study led by the UM finds that fruits, vegetables grown in urban farms and gardens have a carbon footprint that is, on average, 6 times greater than conventionally grown produce. What do you have to say about that?
It says an international study evaluating fruits and vegetables grown in urban farms. Yeah, I can see it now. Have a carbon footprint that is on average 6 times greater than conventionally grown produce. I really don't know what to think about that. What do you think about this?
I think it's crazy. I think, what? I mean, come on. This has got to be the most ludicrous thing I've ever seen in my life. How do you figure? Okay, so, and since we're going to do that, we're going to do this. We're going to steal this guy's stuff for a second, and we'll let him tell you about it. And then we'll talk about it a little bit more. But I hope everybody's enjoying this. I managed to turn the sound on, share, and then we'll go over here.
University of Michigan, you should be ashamed of yourself. And no, I'm not talking about the Connor Stallions thing. I'm talking about this study which led to these headlines all across the news, which claims that urban gardening and therefore backyard gardening is producing 5 to 6 times more carbon footprint than traditional agriculture. And no, not overall globally, but a per capita or per vegetable or fruit basis. And this is just crazy to me. And that's why it's made so many headlines, is because people hear this, that, you know, someone making a garden in their backyard is producing more carbon emissions and more negative impact to the environment than large scale ag. And the reason why this is so insane is because it is insane. This is a textbook definition of a university study that is trying every way that it can to manipulate the data to try to make a point. Because if these university studies don't get the...
Okay, so what do you got to say about this guy so far? I mean, what is he telling you?
Right. But this is the thing. I want to know how it's creating a much more negative effect on, you know, the environment than industrial farming. I'm just trying to figure out how they came to that conclusion, though. Does he say it in this little chat here?
I don't know.
I'm trying to figure out how that's so.
Yeah, well, so am I. I looked up the study myself, and it was just too long and too complicated to have on here. And I imagine I suppose they imagined it because, so I wrote it till my garden. It takes a gallon of gas, you know, and I plant, you know, 5 tomato plants and, you know, a couple watermelons and, you know, a little bit of radishes and carrots. And for what I harvest out of that, you know, I spent a lot of watering. I spent gas, rototilling, you know, all those little things, my time and effort going in there, wear and tear, chemicals I put on the ground in them little spots or whatever. I suppose you add that up, and for that little area and the few vegetables you get, you probably could get a number that wouldn't be consistent with a gigantic, enormous farm.
Right. So the reason I asked this because my method of gardening, for example, like you've seen videos of mine where I grow watermelons, I got trees and whatnot. Um,
Yes.
you know, I do a lot of looking at it. I'm trying to figure out how somebody says that it's a negative effect on the environment. So, I mean, you explained your way. So I'll give you an example. I plan ahead. Let's say I have a bed that I want to use next year and I have a space, right? But it's
Mm-hmm.
full of grass. What I do is I put cardboard down because a lot of people could go the tilling route, which they would need machinery or whatnot to flip over the soil. I
Yeah.
put the cardboard down and then I put wood chips on top. But I of course had to get a good network with a friend of mine who owns a tree company and he brings me the wood chips. So I've got plenty of wood chips. He brings me like 5 piles of this, like truckloads of it, and I'm able to spread it around the garden. But the raised bed part, I put the wood chips on there and I leave it there through the entire winter. By the springtime, there's no
Mm-hmm.
grass there, and it's actually good because I've had already earthworms and microorganisms going after the cardboard, which they like. Um,
Yeah.
I opened that up, and I've already been composting the entire winter also. So the only thing I'm really using is peat moss to mix with the soil that's already on the ground and the compost, and then I put my plants down, and then I'm putting a very very thick layer of mulch, to cover that area, and I'm actually watering much less because I'm depending on making sure that the environment is always stable underground, basically where the root system is. And the reason why is because this prevents me from having to go buy fertilizers and chemicals to keep the plants healthy, because the health of the plant is determined by the microorganisms that are down there. So you got to look at that as like a little world down there, but you have to be the one to make sure you set it up in a way where it's never compromised. Because once they get compromised and something happens where the organic matter stops working, your plant appears to have a deficiency. But in my world, there's no such thing as deficiencies. It's just that something stopped working. So that's why I like to make sure that I don't become a slave to the land where I constantly have to go water, constantly have to go put fertilizers. Nobody's doing that in nature, right? The trees grow as big as possible and whatnot, but it's an environment that's set up in a way where it's years upon years of, like, let's say, dead leaves falling, animals dying on top of it, animals defecating there. It creates a natural organic matter on top. So the layer of skin is very thick. So for us, let's say for the immune system of our body, the first line of defense is the skin. They'll even say that even when you're somebody who's ultra sensitive, they'll say, you have a little bit more thick skin. I look at that as because you even have a bacterial cloud around you that protects you. That's your aura. You know what I'm saying? But we're surrounded by viruses and bacteria. But I feel like a lot of that's why I want to figure out where they're getting this study from. Is it because of people who do machinery and, like, let's say, mechanical work in their garden? Because the way I'm doing it is there's no machinery in my garden, but there's also very minimal watering because I don't even have to water. It's just very very thick layer of mulch. I really don't even use anything to get rid of pests. Like, let's say if I see whiteflies invading my apple tree, I've got a swarm of ladybugs 2 days later to clean out that infestation, because I can take divine intervention and start using chemicals. But the moment I do that, I make myself again a slave to the land, because now I cut the food source for the predators that are supposed to come in to take care of that, infestation of whiteflies that were already there. So you kind of like wait for nature to balance itself out. It's the same way that happens in nature. But to begin with, you have to set up the garden a certain way. Companion planting is very important, which allows certain, beneficial bugs to come in and, just keep everything in homeostasis. Just like the body's always trying to always stay in homeostasis, but we always get in the way of it. We should never get in the way of the way you do your gardening. But you have to also look at how nature is, watch how your body is, and you'll see that everything works uh, in harmony. It works to your favor. I hope that makes sense, because that's basically how everybody should be gardening, is just basically setting it up like a well structured business. But a good business is where you have the business working for you and you're not a slave to the business. You got good workers, you got good management, you got good departments, you know, and that's how I look at everything. It should be where you got it structured accordingly. And hi everybody, I see everybody in the chat saying what's up. What's going on, everybody? So yeah, what do you think about that, Robert?
Well, I think you're right. I mean, I think what it is a lot of people don't know. First, they don't know how to garden, and
Absolutely.
then they just go. They don't know what's good for the garden, and they've never really experimented. They you go to town, you go to Walmart or the little garden store, and what do? The first thing they got some fertilizer for sale, and then they got your plants for
Yeah.
sale, and then and the little bins to put them in, and the fake dirt, to put it in. There's nobody there to tell that person, hey, let's teach you how to garden. Most people don't think you just throw the seeds in dirt and it grows.
Yeah, yeah. You know, there's a big
And
difference between farming and gardening. You don't think so? Like it's just two different
yes,
things, man.
it
And
totally is.
we even started this conversation before we went live on even DMT, and it's crazy how you literally build it. You know what the plants want after a while when you're there long enough and you're doing it with such a passion. You kind of like know what the plants want and what the plants need. It's kind of like the plants are there and they grow. You know what's funny is even before, even like my seeds, bro, I put them in my mouth before I put them in the ground. You know that? Or
Yeah,
before I put them in a seed starting pot, I actually sometimes even like urinate in them, and I kind of like manifest these plants as myself, and I already know what they need in the moment. You know, sounds
well, you're
crazy because people think that they have to do drugs to get to that experience, which is a spiritual experience with your plants, but you can get there if you're really doing it in from a spiritual space. You know.
well, yeah, absolutely. Should we hear what the rest of this guy's got to say? Here, let's see
Yeah,
what.
because I'm curious to see if he had mentioned what the studies are.
Headlines and they don't get the funding that they want. And I would gladly debate these scientists and students and postdoctorates that came up with this idea that the home gardener or urban gardener produces a larger carbon footprint than large scale ag. So, in order to get the data point that they wanted and the headlines that they wanted, what they did is they made three separate categories of urban gardening. The first one is the typical backyard gardener, so someone that has maybe a few raised beds,
That could
containers,
be
or a little
you.
veggie plot in the backyard. The next category are community gardens, so places like a community garden or a church that opens up an area where they have multiple plots that you can then rent out by the season. And the third one are the urban farms, and this is the one that actually probably does have a large carbon
Pause
footprint.
it.
Oftentimes, these
Okay.
are vertical farms or
You
Yes.
see what he just said? He said urban garden and the traditional gardener, and look what he called this one, urban farm. They call this one farming. You saw
Yes.
that? That's
Yes.
what I was telling you. There's a difference between the farming and gardening. When you're gardening, I don't see how there's any po- possible study that they can come out with to say that that causes a negative carbon footprint to the environment. I just don't see how that's possible unless he
Yeah.
mentions it here. But this guy is actually for, you know, in favor of the side that we're talking about. He's not the one that's saying that
Hmm.
that this is the way it is. You know, he's actually saying that it's ridiculous. You know, just like what you mentioned, it's
Yeah.
ridiculous. But
Well, it
mhm,
is. And you see how this is. You got the plants growing in these little tubes. You probably don't have
yeah,
dirt in there. It's all water fed. It means you got to
yeah,
have pumps, and then there's probably look at grow lights up here,
right.
and so now you got electricity, and
That's right.
this may look all nice and good, like, oh boy, I got the best vegetables ever. We control every aspect of this plant's life. We keep them in this building. There's no bugs. We have all the special water and blah 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 blah. But you know how much energy that takes?
Yeah,
Tons
absolutely.
and tons of it. I mean,
Hmm.
ever turn on a grow light? They take a lot to run. Are you ready?
That's right.
You ready
Yeah,
for this? Okay.
converted warehouses or containers, and they have a lot of energy draw because they're using grow lights and things like that, or
yeah,
just overall just all of the infrastructure that goes into these urban farms compared to a field farm that's outdoors. Obviously obviously your grandma growing some tomatoes in her backyard has nowhere near the amount of carbon footprint as large-scale greenhouses that are intensively growing tomatoes using grow lights and fancy technology and lots of ag workers. But that's common sense. And unfortunately, common sense doesn't make for good news headlines. So what they did is they took all three of those separate categories and they lumped their data together. And because the carbon footprint of those urban farms was so high, whenever they added it together with the backyard gardeners, which is really low, then they got this data point, which made all the headlines. Now, I don't think the entire study was meant to try and discourage backyard gardeners, but the headlines certainly could be taken that way if people just take it at face value and say, wow, it's more efficient to buy my produce from a large farm rather than.
See, but that's the thing. You know, they put these headlines out and it's to grab your attention, kind of like my headline tonight for my show. I don't know if you've seen it, but it says, "Stop guarding now. It's bad." You know, well, you know, that's going to grab somebody's attention. Just like it says here, you know, I don't know, you know, if this is going to make any headway, but I mean, think of all the people it's brainwashed who are now going to be marching on Washington with big signs that say, "Get rid of small gardens, stop gardening, let corporations do it because it's threatening the climate." Oh my gosh, the climate is you know gonna overheat us, or you know, or something. You know, there's too many fossil fuels being used on these, you know, backyard gardens because they didn't.
You think it'll get that far though? You think it'll get that far?
I don't know, but I got some more stuff to show you here in a little bit that says it already has went that far. Okay, let's finish up with this guy.
Than growing it myself or having a small local community garden provide that for us. And there were a few good nuggets in the article, such as reminding people that if you are going to use infrastructure such as raised beds, greenhouses, garden sheds, grow lights, etc., if you can use those for as long as possible without constantly replacing the materials in them, then that's going to lower your carbon footprint. But this type of sensationalism that comes from, in my opinion, a flawed study like this is just something that I don't like to see in the news, because I would never want to discourage people from trying to do more small scale urban gardening than what's currently happening right now.
So there we go. And we will stop with his stuff because that's the end of the video. Anyway, the point is we're right. You know, it's going to discourage some people, and you know, and others it's going to make mad, and it's going to cause a lot of chaos because people have been growing gardens for hundreds of years. Some do it naturally like you, others use fertilizers. Either way, it's you got to feed yourself. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just wondering if it would ever really get that far, and I'm kind of curious to see what other pieces of information you would show here, because I mean, this can go into so many different categories. I mean, look at, for example, these vegan activists trying their best to, you know, outlaw eating meat, for example. But it's just basically creating, like, you know, let's say activism and more, you know, what do you call that? Movements, right? But
Yes.
isn't necessarily ever going to get outlawed. But then now you're starting to see a rise in like information about cultured meats and whatnot, and then, you know, the whole argument was about, you know, it being sustainable for the environment. But I don't think lab grown or cultured meat is going to do any better for the environment anyway. So it's like, you know, how would that go if you're trying to outlaw something like that and it's been going on for a long time? Something like this, I'd be pretty mind blown if if it ever did get to the point where they were trying to stop people from actually doing it. What would be the consequences of somebody even like gardening to begin with? Like, if I'm growing watermelons, what are they gonna do? Give me a fine or something like that? Like, what would be the
Oh, they've already done that. Well, I got here. Look at
really?
local laws ban front yard food gardens in cities across the USA. It says
Really?
restrictions requiring residents to rip up vegetables or face fines and jail time If sustainability
Wow.
starts at home, then do the rules that determine just how sustainable you can be in your own home life. Farmers can rely on their own crops, livestock for food, compost, clothing, a host of other solutions. Gardens can be a great place for homeowners to help feed their family, use compost waste. Even other less obvious home-based pursuits can feed into sustainability efforts. But I think I got some
Wow.
other things here. It talks about here about using your own garden, and it says and it talks about even things that we take for granted. Like here, I was talking about home brewing in America was in recent decades is a great example how federal rules can affect your home. And before 1978, it was illegal for Americans to brew beer at home.
Huh.
So there you go, believe it or not. It says growing food at home, gardens the easiest, most popular, and most personal ways to promote and consume sustainable food. Uh, more popular since 2009. It says a 2014 report by the same group found that a number of edible gardens have grown since the early report in by 17%. A 2012 report in the New York Times. Despite the mushrooming popularity of raised food at home, gardens around the country have faced a dizzying number of bewildering restrictions in recent years. And then it goes on about different places. A vegetable grows organically on his property in Orlando when the trouble began. It says he led the article, which focused on some municipal battles over home gardens. A neighbor's landlord had complained that the Halverson's little garden made his house look like a farm. Halverson, a sustainability consultant, squared off against the city officials intent on forcing him to rip up the garden in front of his front yard. The city backed down in 2013, and Halverson was able to keep his garden, but others haven't been so lucky. In some local governments have gone as far as to rip food-bearing plants from yards of residents. Denise Morrison of Tulsa, Oklahoma. You'd think Oklahoma would be real, good about this stuff, but no.
Mhm.
Oklahoma is such a victim. In 2012, Tulsa code enforcement officers walked into Morrison's front yard without her permission and uprooted her edible garden. Morrison, who was unemployed at the time, was using the food she grew to sustain herself during a difficult period. Code enforcers, on the other hand, were enforcing a city ordinance that said plants cannot be higher than 12 inches unless they're used for human consumption. Morrison's garden contained lemon, stevia, garlic, chives, grapes, strawberries, apple, mint, spearmint, peppermint, fruit trees, and other foods that would have been used for her consumption. Had the code enforcers not cut some down and ripped others right out of the ground, the city claims Morrison's yard did not contain any organic garden, but had large amounts of unattended, dead, decaying vegetation, unhealthy trees, dead tree limbs, and rotting tires. Morrison, who had taken photos of her edible garden and shared them with the city, fought back, filing a civil rights lawsuit against the city. Amazingly, two successive federal courts dismissed her lawsuit. They determined Tulsa officials had provided Morrison with an adequate notice before taking action. Wow. See, so like there you go. Here in 2011 in Oak Park, Michigan, woman was threatened with more than 3 months in jail for keeping a beautiful, well-manicured edible garden in front of her front yard. City officials charged Julie Bass with a misdemeanor, arguing that Bass's basil, cabbage, carrots, cucumbers, tomatoes, and other edibles produced were not suitable live plant material. The city has its own definition of what suitable means. If you look at the dictionary, suitable means common. Anyway, there you go. What do you say to that? 3 months in jail there, for growing a garden.
So what was the reason though? Because they said it wasn't suitable.
Yeah, suitable means their definition. And, according to them, having a garden in your front yard is not suitable because these cucumbers and carrots and cabbage didn't look good. They didn't look like a, that's the thing with these cities. They want everybody's yard to look like a lawn. Here's
Yeah, just grass and all uniformed and
yeah.
uh so I mean here's the question to ask is because let's say if it's either her private home or was she part of like a suburban community where they have their own set of rules for their land. You get what I'm saying? A lot of people don't own their land, and they're still under the rules of whatever property management they're in. But was that her home, or was she part of like some community that
It
didn't
sounded
allow that?
she was at her home when they came. The city as its let's see what about meaning of the word. Suitable, it means among other terms that do not include the word common, similar, matching, adapted to use or purpose or proper. And apparently it didn't fit in. I don't know. I'm
That was
just
so
going.
weird because like for example, let's say I'm in the process of buying a home right now,
Yeah. Hmm.
and a couple of places I pass by, there's options to buy land and there's options to purchase the home with the land. And whenever they sell you land, they'll say you can't move like a trailer into that space because it's not combining with the entire neighborhood. They want to keep the neighborhood with just houses and not start to put trailers there. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So before you move, they would have these set of rules, so you can have like this little social contract with everybody to keep everything uniformed and whatnot. But I just find it weird, the whole plant situation. Um, I would have to do more research because it could be, again, so many different variables. I mean, like I said, if she's part of like a neighborhood that's like a community, like for example, you have trailer parks. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They're
Hmm.
run by property management. There's certain
Hmm.
things you can't do on the land, regardless of your owner of the property. If it's a home, same thing. If you don't own the land, then you know
Yeah.
you own the home, but not the land. I mean, you and they say it's not suitable or common. That's one thing, but as far as it being an environmental hazard, I guess it would have to be the way you're doing it. But I just find this outrageous that it's even a thing, right, Robert? I mean,
Yeah.
you're doing gardening. Like, how bad is
Yeah.
it?
Well,
Are
I
you
know,
kidding?
and the examples keep going. Here's another one. Other examples of cities, town cracking down on residents, vegetable gardens are less extreme, if no less ridiculous. In 2012, for example, Newton, Massachusetts. That's where Lucky's from Massachusetts. You're in there. Well, you're
Yeah.
farther down. Officials ordered a town resident to remove his hanging tomato garden from his front yard. Officials said that the hanging garden violated a city ordinance prohibiting the construction of a swing sets, swimming pools, or sheds in front of the yard. Newton resident Ellie Kratzkoff was forced to move his plants to the grounds of Andover Newton Theological School, a nearby seminary. The seminary was happy to take the tomatoes, but its leader was perplexed by the town's behavior. Who can be against tomatoes? So tomatoes is a fruit, probably. Okay. So anyway, uh, that's ridiculous. They sell those hanging baskets all over the place.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Um, let's see. Unwarranted depression code. Here's another one. She was, in 2011, Julie Bass installed several raised beds in her front yard of her suburban property in Oak Park, Michigan. Bass quickly learned that her gardening efforts intended to teach her kids about growing their own food and to provoke the eye of the city. The Bass was cited with a civil misdemeanor for not planting grass, shrubs, or other suitable live plant material. See, this is the thing. They want everybody to conform. Plant grass, shrubs, or live. What's wrong with the tomato plant? Or I bet you she had raised beds and planted flowers, it would have been fine. But no, she was growing, other things. It was left to think that there would be pretty broad and unwarranted interpretation of the code. Bass wrote in a blog, the documenting her experience, when Oak Park officials threatened to prosecute Bass with more serious criminal misdemeanor, which would potentially come with a 93 day jail sentence. She took her story public. Unfortunately, not unique. City regulation, homeowners association guides, and other ordinances have often been invoked to force gardeners to remove their plants. Yes. But anyway, so, but progress is being made in both Florida and Illinois so far. That hard-won legislation where they're getting bills passed to right to grow. So if you grow vegetables in those cities, you have a right to grow. Like I said, this is some of the things, So what we discussed in the beginning about, you know, the garden thing using so much of a big footprint, that's just enforcing what these cities are trying to do. They're saying, hey, look at the, you're using all this stuff, and we want to get rid of these gardens. And here you go with these other people, all these people getting fines, and their cities saying don't do blah blah blah. That's just gonna be more oomph behind them, not the regular person like you or me.
Yeah. What city? What city are you in? I mean, what state are you in?
North Dakota.
It's not affecting you over there. They're not like there's no
No.
rules over there or anything like that, right?
No, not. I suppose if I was in maybe Fargo or something, but out here, anywhere out here, like every place I've ever lived, there's usually a place in the backyard to have a garden. And I was surprised when I first came out here. I couldn't believe that almost every house in town had a little garden in their backyard or front yard or wherever they had a little spot. They had a garden and they were growing stuff. And I was like,
Yeah.
I love this place. I'm never leaving.
Yeah, yeah. Over here I see a lot of people doing gardening as well. Uh, I mean, I can't even imagine something like that coming through here because I mean, I think there'd be riots because this is basically full of farms where people have their cows, their chickens, their pigs, and aside they got their gardens, and
Mhm.
some people do it again the way where they're tilling. Some people do it the more natural way. I mean, my garden is not enormous, but I make very intelligent space with what I'm growing. It's basically because everything you mentioned in the beginning about grapes, tomatoes, all types of trees, blackberries, strawberries, the tubers. I mean, I'm growing all that, but
But
I just don't see. Mhm.
of course, well, that's the thing. And even though you're growing all that, one day somebody will come along and say, "We don't like that, and you got to get rid of it." And there you go. It's like these people here that got up. The guy, it says here, they gardened and had vegetables for 17 years. And all of a sudden they came around and says prohibited according to new zoning code. They zoned a new zoning code and banned the front yard vegetable garden. Now you had it there for 17 years. Now you
Mhm.
gotta plow it under and plant grass. They had to dig up their plants, which supplied half of the food they ate, or face a $50 per day fine. Can you believe that? Because, somebody decided in town, like it says that when these things come out from the University of Michigan says, you know, small gardens are using 5 to 6 times what a big, well, you know what? That city council sits down and they say, well, I didn't read the study, but I seen all the news. We need new zoning. Get rid of those gardens. See, it just gives
Huh.
them fuel to do that stuff. And
Yeah, I think it's ridiculous.
I do too. But at
Yeah.
what point when you show up one morning and there's city workers out there pulling up all your garden and vegetable stuff because hey, didn't you know there's a new city code that says gardens aren't allowed? What? Anyway,
So, what would you do in a situation like that? If that happened to you, what would you do?
I would be trying to call some city officials. I
Mhm.
would be calling somebody to find out what the heck is going on. But I mean, by that time, they've already pulled up your garden. They're already going around and pulling up the stuff, like that lady said. She come home, they're pulling up her garden. they're whacking down her trees, they're, you know, everything, and they probably sent her a bill for doing that, you know. And then now it's up to her to go back. Like she said, she had some pictures of her garden before they destroyed it, because she can't come back and say, oh, you know, this was this. No, it was horrible. There was, you know, dead tree limbs, and there was, well, maybe her grapes were growing on the dead tree limbs, you know, and maybe she had tires that she used for the plants, you know, to keep them up, you know what I mean? Because you can take old tires and use them for a lot of stuff.
Oh, I got old believe it or not, I got old tires, and I'm using old tires for certain things.
Well, yes.
They work
See what
very
I
well,
mean?
man.
They would come in and say to you, oh my gosh, that place was horrible. There was old tires laying out there. There was wood chips everywhere. Place looked like a disaster. Well, yeah, by the time they get done with it, it would look like a disaster.
Yeah.
And, you know, like I said, I know you wouldn't be able to fight it now, but then the thing is, do you just start to conform and just say, okay, you know, they zoned it. What can I do? Nothing. And either pack up and leave or go fight City Hall, I guess.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and if they
You know.
gave you a notice that you had to pull up your garden in, you know, 30 days or go to jail, what would you do? You
Yeah.
know, pull up your garden or fight City Hall? I don't know. Hire a lawyer that would cost you thousands and thousands of dollars to fight them? I don't know.
Yeah. Me personally, if that ever happened to be,
Mm,
and there was no way to get around it, let's say,
mm.
because
Yeah.
again, it's their rules here, and then it's that or that. I mean, I would just move out, bro. To be honest with you,
Well,
uh,
yeah.
the the whole thing is, I don't ever think that's going to be such a big issue or sustainable thing. I just think it's there to get a rise out of people. I mean, have you watched YouTube videos on like gardening and food plants, and it's a very popular thing. Matter of fact, when I put up videos about my garden, I feel like I get a lot of views, but it's not views from subscribers of mine. It's really views from like outside sources of people just typing in how to do certain things. So I've got like information on like papaya trees, right? I've got like literally over 20,000, views on one of those videos. A few other ones on like, just basically uprooting or taking care papaya trees, avocado trees, citrus, very popular topics. You get what I'm
Mm,
saying?
yeah.
And I feel like it's gonna be something where if it ever does become a thing, I don't think it would be sustainable. But if it ever was to be a thing for some reason, I don't feel like it's gonna affect the person who. I mean, we talked about this on the New Year video because
Mhm.
I'm really really big on this. When you put a lot of like, you ever heard me when I tell you that doomsday apocalypse people they
Mm.
start becoming doomsday preppers. They're more than likely to experience doomsday apocalypse just because they put so much energy and worry to it that it's not going to go away. There's basically a living doomsday for those people, just like these things happen. If it ever becomes a thing, I mean, the same way somebody would spend thousands of dollars fighting a lawyer, I'd rather just put the thousands of dollars and move out. You know what I'm saying? Just invest somewhere else where it won't be a problem. But and
Well, yeah.
that's if because I like gardening. Gardening's a big thing to me, but I'm also not planted like a tree. I can walk around and move around. It is ridiculous. I think it's something that's catastrophic and stupid. You know what I'm saying? But if it ever was something that's out of control, I mean, I would just move out, bro. You know,
Yeah.
um, weigh the options. What's worth my time? Is it worth having to call officials? If you see that it's something that you can't get around, I mean, shit, just move.
That's right. But where are you going to move to? Because our next topic here we got to talk about is
Uh-huh.
this guy, Bill Gates. If you don't recognize him, Bill Gates, who's buying up all the land, well, at least we think he is. But
Good old Billy,
yes, Bill Gates recently, a
the
long time
computer
ago,
guy.
yeah, he owns some 80 theory that he owns 80% of the farmland, which is not true. Uh, Gates talked about it. He responded he owns less than 1/4,000th of the farmland in the U.S. Uh, he invested in these farms to make them more productive and create jobs. And the grand scheme, blah blah blah, professional investment team. So there you go. While Gates has spent billions investing in agriculture properties to make them more productive, a growing number of retail investors are getting a piece of the real estate market with as little as $100 through companies backed by high-profile investors like Jeff Bezos. What do you think? Is he buying too much land or not? Is there?
So the land he's buying, is it because he wants control of how the people farm, or is it because whatever is being exported and sold, he's getting a cut because he's owner? Which one is it? Is he controlling the way things are? I know the chemicals and all that. You know what I'm saying? It has to be something used to basically protect crops and whatnot because everything's money, right?
Yeah,
So
and obviously he's doing it because it's a good investment because that's what
it's a
rich
great
people
investment.
do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but he's not the only one. Look at here. China owns 380,000 acres of land in the U.S. And here's where. China owns land all over. Look at, they even own in 2021, a Chinese company bought land near an Air Force base in Grand Forks, North Dakota. Oh my gosh, that's right by me. Sending lawmakers into a frenzy. Lawmakers feared that China would, which many policymakers view as strategic adversary, even though it's one of the top country's top trading partners outside North America, could gain control over the U.S. food and energy supply, as well as hold on markets and critical infrastructure. So not only Bill Gates is buying the land, but China's buying the land.
Yeah.
And it talks about, although China owned land has a tiny fraction of all foreign land, which is true. We made a big deal about it because it's China. China is, owning all the land,
Yeah.
but they're really not. How much land did they own? They're ranked 18th among countries that own U.S. land. Well, then, who are all these other people? Foreign investors, 85 Chinese investors, the individual companies, 62 corporations. It's all corporations. And here we go to our next one here. I can't remember where I had it. They only own like less than 1% of all U.S. agriculture land. But here it is. Canadian investors own 31% of all foreign land held, followed by investors of the Netherlands. Who would have thought? Italy, Netherlands is 12%, Italy is 7%, and the United Kingdom 6%, and Germany, of all places, 6%. Of the states which most foreign land, agricultural land, is Texas with 5.3 million acres, led the way in percentage terms. Maine is at the front at over 20% of its private agricultural land is owned by foreign investors, according to the USDA. Wow. Well, there you go. And who would have believed that? So, we're making this big stink about, oh, China, but it's Canada. you know, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And in Texas, 5.3 million, like a big chunk. Factory farming is an urgent health. It goes in here, talks about that. I don't know if I got it. A 10-year plan. Bill Gates is backing efforts to, this is about the trees. He's backing efforts to cut down 70 million acres of trees. You've heard of that one. To fight global warming. The U.S. forces are
Can you go to the previous slide? I think it said something about that one. Factory farming is earned health, environmental, and ethical issue. Now that we're living the consequences of the global pandemic, we need to do everything possible to prevent the next one. The Farm System Reform Act, introduced Senator Corey, Representative RKO, sponsored by Senator Elizabeth Warren, is the first legislative step to halt factory farming's destructive practices and protect public health. Congress to hear from advocates like you that there's a better way for human, animals, and our planet. By submitting this form, you send. See, I don't get it, man. I just don't understand what the like the data is what I would have to like see what the scientific studies are. Like
Yeah,
the first guy you saw that came up on the video,
yeah,
where
yeah.
he says that he would have to see what these claims are, that he would debate these people if that was the case. See, that's what I would have to see, like what the proof is that um, it's got a negative effect on the environment, more than even industrial farming, which I find insanely hard to believe, bro. So
Well,
I would have to
and
see
that's
that, man.
well, that's the thing. We don't have enough time here. Well, I'm trying to bring up the awareness tonight of all these articles so that everybody out
Yeah,
there can, say just like you, I want to see the study now. Hey, look at
yeah,
this. I went out and worked hard to find this information, and now I don't have time to just read through all the studies. Like you know how those studies are. It'll take you an
yeah.
hour to decipher, but you need to look at this stuff. It's something. This is something to open your eyes. Grandpa Brian, good night, Grandpa Brian. He's heading off to
Good
bed.
night, Grandpa Brian.
Yes. He's going to grow a big garden. Maybe we'll have him on next time to talk about his gardening plans for the year. Okay, so then we got this with he's cutting down these 70 million acres. U.S. Forest Service has a 10-year plan to reduce wildfires. It basically went on. Remember when this was going on about a couple weeks ago or a month ago, and they were all, "Oh my God, he's going to cut down 70 million acres of trees and just bury them and all of that." It turned out this was false. There was no plan to cut down 70 million acres. So now the
Did you ever
question,
hear? Did you ever hear at one point when they were talking about blocking the sun because of the
yeah,
harmful radiations and whatnot? Have you heard of that too?
yeah, yeah. See, the thing is we don't know what's true anymore because one week we got Bill Gates coming out. He's cutting down 70 million acres of trees, and they're going to just dig a big hole and bury them. And then, here a month later in the fine print, it says, that article was false. There's no plan to cut down 70 million acres of trees. It's just a 10-year plan to reduce wildfires. And we know that the wildfires are bad because I'm sure you even had smoke down by you from Canada. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, it was
Yeah.
terrible this last year.
In
But
yeah, yeah, yeah.
oh, I that was all I had to say.
Yeah, in New York it was really bad, but I'm just you know, mind blown how bad it was in New York. I didn't get the smoke down here, which is funny. I didn't get any of the smoke here, but any of the places in between New York and Canada didn't get as much of the smoke that was in New York, which I found interesting because I'm like, well, wouldn't the states or the places in between Canada and New York get that kind of smoke as well?
Yeah, well, like here we got a lot. It was like pea soup out. It burned your eyes,
Really?
your nose, and throat. Oh my God, it was like fog. I mean, it blocked out the
Wow.
sun. It was terrible. Oh yeah, it was real bad. Yeah,
Mm,
everything looked like a yellow haze all day. And by the time you got
yeah.
done with your day, your eyes were burning, your throat was sore, felt like you were getting sick, but you didn't. you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'm
But
glad I wasn't in New York around that time though.
yeah, here's another part. It says, Bill Gates, and this was false. He was, but anyway, but it just tells you that, how this is how they manipulate us. Okay, now I got some things here. We're going to do a map here before we do this part. Um, and then we'll go through this part where uh, it's talking about how good gardening is and what it can do for you. Okay,
Yeah.
these maps. So I found a bunch of maps, and you can see federal public land, surface, and subsurface. The red is all the public lands, which means that this is all government property. And I was like, holy cow, all federal lands. There's a lot of it. Where are the
Yeah.
people living? That's all I want to know. So you mean all of us here, we're thinking there's all this land out there. Oh, I'm going to have no, not really. The government owns most of it, you know. And then out of all that land, foreign-owned land by county. And here you go with the percentages of this. And you can see Texas has pretty much the most here. I think this is Colorado's got a bunch. You know, pretty much every state has some. Maine is the most, 21. Hawaii, 12.8%. Alabama with 8.6. Michigan with 8.6. And Nevada with 8.1. And remember, most of this stuff out west here is all federally owned land. And then what little land there is has a bunch of foreign owners.
Huh.
So go figure with that. Just to give you an idea, you know, look at this up here, Maine. Most of Maine, you know, is owned by other countries. Wow. Countries with Iran, Russia, Cuba, or Venezuela-based investors in U.S. ag land. And Venezuela owns all this purple stuff. Look at purple, Florida, Venezuela. This is where are you? North Carolina here somewhere. This is down here. Nothing. Georgia, Carolinas, whatever. Yeah, Russia owns this little bitty chunk right here, a little bit here, a big chunk in California, and Venezuela owns.
I'm surprised how much Venezuela owns, though.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, just blows my mind. Look, Venezuela, and in Montana. What is Venezuela doing in Montana?
Is that New York that they own there too, or no?
And this red is Iran. This red chunk right here in New York. This is New
That's
York.
New York.
Yeah, I think that's New York. Yeah. That's Massachusetts. No, yeah, New York is this part.
New York is a little further down. I think that little strip there, right where your arrow's at, that's New York.
Yeah, this is Iran.
Mhm.
Huh. Weird, huh? But I mean, the stuff is out there. Concentration of foreign-owned land by county, and over 200,000 acres. Of course, Maine, Michigan, Nevada, Texas, New Mexico, Colorado get a lot. Even Montana gets a bunch. So there you go. People, you can look up your own maps, but counties with China-based investors in the U.S. agriculture. California's got a big chunk. Texas, Utah, Washington. This here's Virginia, isn't it? Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina. Yeah.
That's right next to it's right next to North Carolina.
Yeah. So there you go. Illinois, Illinois states, Iowa, Missouri, Arkansas, Oklahoma, pretty much every state. Not my state. Look at that. North, South Dakota, empty. Montana, empty. Yay. High quality. Okay, so now remember our other maps. Now here, high quality farmland. And of course, you can see those places like Texas, Florida, you know, along the coast here where these foreign investors, California, remember this chunk right here where Iran and China and everybody own the big chunk? Look at that's the high quality farmland. You know, so all the high quality farmland places are where these foreign investors are invested. They're in it to make money. That's what it boils down to. They're in it to make money.
I wish I could see the chat. What does the chat think about that? Everything we've talked about. Did they give any opinions on it?
Yes, here. Okay. F. Kitty says also they have purchased interest in many U.S. based ag businesses and then send their product or give first bid to China based on first in and not price. Yeah, well, that's true. Well, they own it. They can sell it to whoever they want. Venezuela is in bed with China, so probably China of way of Venezuela. Yes, I agree, because Venezuela, how did they get all of that? Let's see here. She's talking. Bill Gates owns 90% of the farms in the USA now. I don't think so. I think these other corporations definitely do.
He's a great guy.
Let's see. They used
he's
to be
a great
laws.
guy.
Yeah. Limiting our state and landowners against foreign ownership. They have been systematically voted out and rolled back using closed vote. Yeah, see, that's the corrupt people in office, and they get paid, and then that kind of just sits there, and they say, oh, we're going to vote something different. Chloe, she says, are they having class tonight? I haven't seen Max Vision for class tonight, so I don't know, Chloe. Let us know if he's going to have class, and we'll post it in the chat here. Okay. Okay, now we're going to get rid of this, and we're going to go back to when you do have a garden. Why are you having a garden? Reconnecting with nature. Number 1 on the list. You agree with that?
Yeah, because you're now having direct contact with the soil through your fingers and just basically going out and breathing everything that's around you. Kind of like what children are doing when they're kids. You know how kids are interacting with viruses, bacteria that keeps their immune system strong? It's the same
Yeah.
thing with us, man. I mean, we're not meant to be indoors at all times under air conditioners and artificial lights. You know what I'm saying? So we should be outside and reconnecting with nature because that's the ultimate way to improve physical health, which is number 3 on that list, and stress relief and mental well-being, which all go hand in hand, to be honest with you, man.
Yeah.
There's so many benefits to being outside and gaining that ethereal energy. I mean, again, just working inside, doing office work at all times, is everything's just it's just not conducive to the environment of the body. So
Yeah. Oh, it's true. That's exactly it. So not only is the food feeding you, but
yeah,
it's the garden doing the garden and being in the garden. And you're getting all this stuff for your body from the outside.
that's right.
I mean, it's balance.
Well, you know what's crazy though? Like, you know how when you're growing your own food, you're growing it with love, you're growing it with your own frequency and vibration. You know how people say you got a green thumb? The plants basically are reacting to you, the person that's creating that environment. So, I mean, when you eat that food, it's just so much more invigorating for you. And not only that, but there's actually a study that shows that, especially with what I told you, that if I put the seed in my mouth, or let's say if I take a piss on my garden or whatnot, the plants know what my deficiencies are, and believe it or
Mhm.
not, man, the plants actually fill in that deficiency or nutritional gap in you upon eating your fruit that you're growing. So you got a direct connection with nature in that way too.
Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's
It's
move
like the
on.
garden reads you. hmm
Oh,
You know
yeah.
what's funny? This is
Yeah.
another thing I heard also, which I found very interesting.
Yes.
Just you walking the garden, the land starts to grow some medicinal herbs that your body needs to actually keep you healthy. Have you heard of that?
No, never heard of that.
Yeah, man.
Okay.
If you spend enough
That
time in the
that's
garden, you'll start growing certain herbs, certain just weeds. Like, let's say we call weeds, and we kill them with
yeah.
Monsanto, herbicides and whatnot, which we should never be doing that. That's actually bad
Mhm.
for the environment, if anything. I think
Yeah.
that's where the big problem is people using insecticides and chemicals to keep their plants clean. You know what I'm saying? When in actuality, you should just let things roll. And like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, is setting it up for success. So
Mhm. Absolutely.
yes,
Absolutely.
our hands on plants. Yep.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Did I? Here. There we go.
Yeah. It
Yes.
says yes. Our hands on makes our plants better for us. Absolutely.
Yeah. It absolutely does. Well, we got fresh and nutritious food. So now, once you worked outside, you got your physical, your mental, everything is going good. You get to eat the nutritious food. Because just like you said, it's growing because you handle it. The food is saying, I'm going to be this and this and this, so I can make you healthy because you did all this good stuff for me. And of course, just like you're doing, you have the environmental stability. Like you're your garden's probably the best because you're using natural stuff. You're growing a,
Yeah.
like you said, a biome of bacteria and stuff in that wood, and you're growing the plants, and you don't have the weeds. You got an ecosystem there. That's what I'm trying to think
Right.
of. Ecosystem of how things are working, and that's giving back to the environment. Every time you put more wood chips on there, they degrade and make compost. They make that soil better than when you found it.
Yeah. Well, I've got 12 compost bins right now that I've been, you know, just putting in since last year. Imagine. So by this spring, that's the nutrients for my plants. It's all broken down organic matter,
Hmm.
and it's all broken down, decomposed. I mean, there's nothing better than that for the plants.
Yeah.
And you are helping the environment doing that.
Okay. And this is one you're doing more than anybody else, I suppose. Conservation of water resources. You were saying you barely water it because you put all that mulch down. It once it rains and stuff, it holds that water. I think doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah, because and the thing is, there's no better water than the water that's coming from nature. It's got the highest nitrogen content. You notice how you water your plants, and it's nowhere near as effective as when it rains. You notice that you can be growing something, and when it rains, your plants look like they just like got a shot of steroids, and that's the
Hmm.
nitrogen that falls from the sky. Um,
Hmm.
What's funny is that this is held in that soil when you have a thick layer of mulch to keep that moisture there. Again, I don't like to work too hard, bro. I like to go out and interact with my garden, but I don't like to work too hard, man. I like to, have it set up in a way where I don't have to water it. It's so thick that I'm telling you, Robert. I mean, it's there's been times where there's been a mini drought, maybe a month of no rain, and if you
Hmm.
make a hole in my garden,
Hmm.
you'll always find moisture under there. You know, you're always gonna
Hmm.
find that moisture because it's just the layer of mulch is very thick and it's just sustained very well under there. And I think I don't know, man. If everybody started doing it in that way, it's called the back to Eden method.
Yeah.
Um, it's one of the most healthiest ways to have a garden, and um, you will always have healthy plants. Because think about this: the pests are only attracted to unhealthy plants.
Hmm.
When you have healthy plants, I mean, they're not going to be attracted to those plants. They like the weaker stuff. So to keep your plant strong is going to be how you condition the soil to begin with. That's why planning ahead is so important, man. You know,
Hmm.
I got everything started planning out up until since literally since December.
Hmm. Well,
So
yeah. Well, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And then you got the educational family bonding. Yeah, because I know when I was a kid, we
yeah,
worked in the garden, we planted the stuff, parents were telling me how to do that, how to plant the stuff, and why we were planting what we were planting. Sometimes I just didn't understand, but I had to go out there and hoe the garden, and then, we picked the stuff, we canned the stuff. And even though how should I say? I didn't do it for a long time. It was embedded into me, and now that I'm older, I remember a lot of that stuff, and it's carried on because now I'm gardening, and I go, oh yeah, that's right. We used to do this, and I got to check for that, and I should do that. And how do I know all this? Because I learned it when I was a kid, like going to school,
yeah.
and I
I want
didn't
to
even
add
know
something
it.
there.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to add something there, but if anybody ever has a question of what the definition of love is, just
Hmm.
doing something like that. But if you really want to do it, because some people don't like gardening, that's fine. But when you're
Hmm.
gardening, man, the heart chakra color is green, and
Hmm.
it's always why I correlate the green thumb that we're talking about. But when you look at these plants thriving and growing, you're experiencing that frequency of love. Love is a growing chemistry. That's how I look at love. Love is something where
Hmm.
you're experiencing the growth of things, um,
Hmm.
sustainability, and your plants. They react to that when you're walking in the garden. I walk with because I do it with passion. and I love what I'm doing. It's something that the plants are picking up from you, and they respond in that same way. You know, that's
Yeah,
that green. The green, the green color is the heart chakra.
that's right. And we got, and this some way was our energy forms and how it breaks off into our, I don't know if you can see all the, but it breaks off into all these things, energy wise, for our health, feeding the trees, making oxygen, into the things we do, our ecosystem, our houses, our cars, plants and foods, down and from the sun, and all of these different things that we get from, it's a circle of life. This is all a circle of life. That's
Yeah,
all it is. And we got our plants and everything right in here, and it comes right from the energy source, which goes straight back to source energy. This is a direct path. So, if you want to get back to source energy, you can go through your plants. It's the
yeah.
direct source. So, well, there we go. Hot diggity dog. Now that was quite the presentation. I think I hope I got it. What'd you think of it? I worked on that to get that going.
Yeah. I mean, it was informative. I'm still gonna continue to plant and do what I need to do.
Well,
Um,
and that's the thing. It's not about it is going to affect you personally
yeah.
right now, if ever, but will it, or could it, or maybe would you be better being on top of it, saying, hey, I'm going to look into some of this stuff and just see what does this study say that's all over the place. And then maybe,
Mhm.
when it does come up and you see it at your city council, you might want to show up and say, hey, that study was all fake. you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I brought the
Absolutely.
papers. It's got the proof right here. That was not true,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they ain't doing the homework. They're not going to do the homework. They're just going to read the
Yeah.
paper and go, oh my
I'm
god.
gonna definitely. Yeah, and I'm definitely gonna be doing some digging into it to see what like where it's coming from and what the studies are. That's what I'm interested in, is basically what they came out or are coming out with the studies.
Hmm.
Because I find it hard to believe that they're saying that it's leaving a negative carbon footprint. I just don't buy that, man.
Yeah. Well, and then that's the thing. I mean, there's so much fake stuff out there, or stuff
Yeah.
that's wrong, but it is right. So, like today, or a couple days ago, my buddy had sent me a video that showing this lady who was in Canada at the grocery store with a box of fried chicken that was priced at $210, and saying, "Oh, we can't afford to buy food here. Don't move to Canada. The prices are outrageous." And she's showing a picture and a video of the box of chicken, and the next chicken was $220 or something like that. And all the boxes were marked.
Wow.
Well, yeah. And then, 3 or 4 days later, it comes out that the guy at the store just mismarked the boxes. There
Yeah.
was like $9 for a box of fried chicken. It wasn't $210. He just mismarked the boxes. That's all it was. And the lady walked up and seen the mismarked box and went, $210 for chicken? Well, I can't afford to eat. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you know, that prices don't go up that much overnight. You wouldn't go to
Nah.
town today and get a jug of milk and it would be $8.95, and tomorrow you go in there and it's $395. Something's wrong.
Yeah. Something's very wrong.
Yeah, I mean the world's ending if that's the case. I worked all week. I got a gallon of milk and I'm broke. But so can you walk us out of all of this and give us your thoughts?
Um. Yeah. I mean, those were basically my thoughts. I don't have too much to say because I don't know what the information on that, from the root of it really is. I can't really speak on something I'm not too sure of. As far as my opinion goes, I mean, it's a thing going on. Obviously, there's studies. You showed it on the screen, but uh, you have a choice to be very worried about it. It's good. Like, you're right. You have to be aware of it and do some study where if it ever did come to your door, at least you're prepared with, facts where you can actually challenge the system. But um,
Mhm.
you have to keep a neutral perspective on it and not get too overworked. It's kind of like, a lot of people, I even mentioned this in one of my videos, remember when food shortage was a thing and people started to
Mhm.
now become panicked over the fact that there was a food shortage. So people started gardening for that reason. And now all of a
Mhm.
sudden now people are gardening and now all of a sudden now it's a bad thing. You get what I'm saying? So which is it? But here's the thing. Um, that also opened up the door for people to garden, but it's no longer out of love or passion. Now people are doing it from a space of fear. You get what I'm saying? And you should never be gardening out of a space of fear, because then that's basically what you're doing. You're just, everything's coming out of fear. So,
Mhm.
and that's just because of the information of food shortage.
Oh
So
yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know. This can stem into many different avenues, but just maintaining a neutral stance on things, like, you know, there's obviously bad things going on in the planet, like wars and stuff that's beyond our control. But I believe this wholeheartedly. You experience things directly when you're really putting a lot of energy and attention to it. So I mean, yeah, learn about it, be aware, but don't feed into it too much to the point that you are creating now and a possibility for that movement to be empowered beyond its beyond humanity's control. So, but
Mhm.
that's basically my opinions on it. It's good information to know. To be honest with you, again, it's good to be aware, but that's about it. What are
Yeah.
your
No.
opinions on it?
Well, I think you're right, but I think you shouldn't guard out of fear, but I think that fear is what will make people say, "Hey, maybe I should garden. Maybe I should look at this information." You know,
Mhm.
and and it's important to. I mean, and the thing is that fear may turn somebody to gardening, and then they could reap all those benefits from it, even though the fear may pass. They may continue on. I mean, I know
Yeah,
my gardening skills, were good when I was a kid, and then I didn't really garden for a long time. But then I came out west here, and I started doing a lot of gardening every year. It became a thing, and then canning and gardening and eating the vegetables and doing all of this stuff was like, hey, maybe I should learn this stuff. If there is an end to everything, maybe I can supplement myself. I better practice on it now
yeah,
than turn around and say, hey, the world did kind of slow down and food is hard to get. And now I'm going to have to learn, like, right now. Oh my gosh,
yeah,
I put the
yeah,
carrot seeds in the ground. I don't know why they're coming up. I'm panicking. I'm gonna starve to death. What can I do?
yeah,
Oh yeah, carrots don't grow in
yeah,
your area. you
yeah.
know, I
And
learned
it
all.
is very, yeah, and the knowledge part is very important what you're mentioning there, because if you are gardening, then
Mm-hmm,
you get more experience and you'll be able to let's say if they come down to challenging the system,
mm-hmm.
you can challenge the system because it's not just like you're reading or being book smart, you're actually doing it. So you can actually speak about it from a wisdom standpoint, so you'd be able to have a more of an understanding on
Yeah,
it. So yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
The knowledge is
But
very important.
well, I got a friend of mine who we talked about it, and he was thinking things that would be important to him to grow, and he came up with, well, gee, I smoke, and I said, well, if the world's going to crap, what are you going to do? Cigarettes are going to be
Yeah,
way more than you can afford, and so he decided he was going to, grow some tobacco and learn
yeah,
how to process it. And it wasn't that successful his first year, but he did grow it. And he went through the steps and stuff like that. So if things did go south, now he knows what he did wrong and what the plants look like and how to grow them. And the second, how it is, the second time around is always easier than that first try. And if you failed on the first try, you're out of luck because you only
yeah,
get one growing season. And
yeah,
now, if he keeps it up, he might perfect it. And voila, he's got all the tobacco he needs for the whole year.
Yeah, yeah. What are you specializing in growing this year?
I've been working a lot of things like potatoes. Potatoes grow really good out here, and
Yeah,
especially with the short growing season and being
yeah,
them in the ground and stuff. And now that I moved to this new place, I'm hoping the guy that was here before actually grew some watermelon and cantaloupe, and he actually had, quite a bit of success with that. And I'm
yeah,
hoping to do the same, because it's like, holy cow, if you can grow it here, well then, I can do it too, and that's
yeah.
a super good thing. Whereas before I was up in Watford, I tried to grow zucchini, and I'd get some zucchini that were about that big, and the watermelons, they didn't even, the plant was as big as the that, and that was it. Never did anything. Just
Yeah,
didn't
yeah, yeah,
do anything. It was terrible. Um,
yeah.
but anyway, I want to end off with one last thing. See,
Mhm.
people, you can do it too. Look at that. Giant watermelon. That still amazes me how that's as big as the ones you buy in this. That thing's huge.
That's
I mean,
big. Yeah,
that was a
that's
big
big. And
watermelon.
you know what's funny is I grew 76 last year.
Wow. You were
Yeah,
giving them all the
I'm doing.
neighbors, weren't you?
Oh yeah, yeah, and I did a lot of juicing too.
You know what my buddy was doing? He got these cantaloupe out here, and of course they weren't very big,
Mhm.
and what he did was he cut them into strips, and he put them in the dryer, and dried them, the cantaloupe.
Really
Yeah, and boy, when he got all done, they were like fruit roll-ups. Oh my gosh, they were good.
nice,
Yeah,
nice.
so that was one of those things, and he made some melon jelly out of it, or something, watermelon rind jelly. He took them
Yeah,
watermelons he had and made the
yeah.
rind into like a jelly, and it's really
That's
good.
awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
I gotta learn how to pickle too. I'm learning how to pickle this year. Somebody's gonna teach me how to do that, like pickle jar,
yeah,
bunch of
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Yeah,
Ah, cool.
I'll learn
See,
that this
and
year. Yeah.
that's the thing. It's all about learning, and you don't want to do it on the day the world collapses. If you're
No,
talking
no,
about the
no.
fear. You want to learn how to pickle now. You want to learn how to
Yeah,
grow them watermelons now, and then have your
yeah.
garden set up, and you say, the world's ending. That's all right. I got seeds, and like I ordered myself a variety of different potato seeds. I did a
Mhm.
show a while back on, did you know there's 5,000, or no, it's 15, not 5,000, 1,500 different varieties of potatoes.
Woo,
And
that's
I'm like,
crazy.
so I started looking it up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's little fingerlings. There's red potatoes with red innards, red potatoes with innards, red potatoes
Uh
with red
huh.
and white innards. There's blue potatoes,
Yeah,
purple potatoes, white potatoes with white innards. Oh my gosh, there's white potatoes with blue innards. I'm like, oh my
yeah,
goodness, there's finger
yeah.
potatoes. There's so many. So I'm gonna
Yep.
have me, since the potatoes grow pretty good out here, I am going to try different varieties of potatoes. So I
Hmm.
got them. I just ordered them today, and they're going to be sent here in March. So I'm excited.
You you making videos on it, right?
Yes, I'm going to make some videos,
Yeah, I
of course.
definitely got to see some videos on it for
Yes,
sure.
absolutely. Going to really get into that this year. I got a big, big, nice garden out here at this new place, and the soil is really good, and I got lots of manure because the
Nice.
horses are right out here. So I'm going to have it made. Gonna have it
Yeah, I'm
going
gonna do
on.
some. I'm gonna do some gardening videos and send them over to you so you can check them out.
Absolutely. Sounds great.
Yeah,
Sounds great. We'll have to
yeah,
get me and Grandpa Brian on a
yeah,
monthly basis comparing our garden notes.
yeah, 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 for
And
sure.
I got a big
100%.
house now. I got a big house now, and I got a greenhouse set
Nice.
up in the basement with grow lights and stuff. So I'm going to start the little
Beautiful.
plants early this year. So
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. That's perfect because then you extend your see because you have a shorter growing season. So if you get started early, you benefit from that, right?
yes, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. So really good at that. I'm really excited with all of that going on. So, but anyway, we better end it. I think people are heading over to Max Vision remote view class. So If you're looking at, I don't know, I think Mary posted the thing in chat here. So go over to Max Vision remote view class, improve your mind. Thank you, Zig Zag Zilla, for another great night of wild and crazy information that we all need to know. And
thank you for having me on, bro.
Oh yeah, and we'll have you back again, because next time I want to know all about that DMT stuff. Gotcha.
Yes, for sure.
Yes. I'm gonna go watch all your videos. Everybody, link for his channel is in the description below. Go over there, check it out. He's got a lot of good stuff on there, and watch those DMT videos. I'm gonna do that this week as I'm driving around. Anyway,
sounds good, brother.
All right. Well, with that, everybody, remember, go out and do something nice for your neighbor, stranger, somebody. At least give them a smile. Because that's what makes the world go round. Makes the world a better place. And remember, most of all, be the frequency you want to receive, everyone. Love you all. Peace, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.